Hello everyone, good Saturday morning. It's about 9 o'clock here in Chicago. Welcome to episode 29 of Bitcoin and Ethereum Elliott wave analysis here for YouTube. So good to see everybody. Thank you for subscribing and visiting this channel. And before we get started, you guys can find me on Telegram and you can find me on Twitter as well. Get in touch with me. I want to hear your ideas. I want to see your charts. I want to, kind of see your questions, what you're thinking, where you see Bitcoin and the whole space going. So go ahead and contact me and get in touch with us throughout these channels. All right, let's jump on and take a look at Bitcoin. Bitcoin hasn't really done much since we've talked about it. It was about a couple of weeks ago on August 14, and we basically rallied over to about 50,000, slightly above 50, and now we're pulling back. I wanted to take a look at the longer term count. You're probably familiar with this by now, where we're looking at Bitcoin as it finished a larger second wave cycle at about 4,000. And since then, we've rallied into this wave 1 and we're working our wave 2 at the moment. We are at some levels in here that are extremely important, I think, for the longer term development here, because I think there's going to be there's a period of decision right at these levels. So if we are to continue higher, we got to continue to push, maybe a small pullback. But there is a risk that this could be just a kind of counter corrective rally, and we can still kind of sell off and retest below the 30K level. I'm not saying that's a high probability, but there is a risk that this count could continue to move even more complex that already has done. So you can see in here I have wave 2 completed at about 29,320, with the likelihood of this being another sell-off here for the wave 2 to continue lower, maybe even towards $20,000. So I've have this label here that says September, November. Notoriously, the month of September, I'll show you a little bit later in this presentation. It's a very weak market for the crypto land, and for the bullish case, it's a little bit of a negative if you are to look at it statistically, towards what happened before. So, but this is kind of the longer term count. We continue to remain bullish. I think the network continues to grow, right? The Lightning Network develops. There is more interest from the institutional side. We are in a larger advance, and with slight corrections along the way that can take anywhere between, let's say, 6 months to maybe a couple of years sometimes, we are continuing to trend higher. So I am watching this kind of long-term chart, and I'm looking forward to Bitcoin to continue to move towards 100,000, 200, eventually getting towards the maybe even $500,000 mark, in the next couple of years possibly. So I continue to stay bullish, but I am aware of this, corrective periods that happened within this advance. Taking a look at this other count here, guys, you're familiar with this one as well. That's kind of under my green, where this move could be considered as a fourth wave in progress. It could kind of start to shape. These moves don't necessarily have to be, directional a lot. So you don't necessarily have to get, let's say, a big sell-off in here towards 20,000. You can continue to kind of move sideways, and that would fit a little bit better the narrative of this being a fourth wave triangle, where this wave is more directional. You have a little bit of a different subdivision that you have in here. You can see how my wave cycle finishes in here. In here I have another subdivision here in this primary wave, 1, 2, 3, sideways wave 4, and this move that we're getting right now, it's a little bit impulsive, so it could be, let's say, just wave A. If I'm to mark it here, right, this would be wave A in here. This whole thing could be a B or just wave A of B. So you can continue to kind of go like that, A, B, C, D, and E, and then push back up higher. So I'll drive down a little bit on the smaller time frame so you can see what I mean. But it can still kind of tell Bitcoin to move sideways until the end of this year before we kind of start the next advance higher. What I don't really like about this count is it's kind of the proportion of this larger fifth wave in here compared with this wave third. I think it's quite large already, and it doesn't really look good in terms of proportion, even with the wave 1 and the wave 3, because you would basically look for it to maybe push back up higher in here, and it would become quite of a large fifth wave, and then that would actually mean that Bitcoin will have to correct very, very deep in here to consider this a completed sequence, and something has to trigger that, right? There's something from the regulatory side or something in the security code or something like that that would make a Bitcoin fully retrace out of there. Let's say you would get up to, I don't know, 200,000 or something, and then sell lower and come back towards 20,000 again, right? That would be a pretty distraught kind of event. So that's why I don't really favor this as being a fifth wave. I've continued to look at it as a series of impulses to the upside as the network continues to grow. So but it is a possibility that this can continue to move sideways and be just a kind of fourth wave triangle, and we can discuss which degree of trend that is. The next one, I wanted to spend just a little bit of time looking at the moving averages, and I'm trying to kind of present these every single couple of weeks just to kind of know where we are and just to kind of remember what's the overall trend, and I want to kind of remind everybody of where things kind of stand, and that's why I'm kind of repeating some of these charts, because sometimes things just don't change that much, and it's good to stay focused on the on kind of the same ideas, because if you continue to flip-flop between counts and change them every single week, you're not going to get far. So you want to stay with your conviction and kind of revisit it every 2 to 3 weeks. I mean, here on YouTube we do it every 2 weeks, but on the program we do it every single day. We don't go in that much detail, but we do look at the smaller time frames, and then every once in a while we look at the the longer frame and say, listen, step away from the smaller noise, go ahead and look at the longer time frame charts and kind of see where you are overall. So here you look at the move in Bitcoin, right? It crossed above the 20-day moving average. That's a plus, for the bullish continuation. It's been getting supported on the sell-off in here, right? It's been tested maybe a couple of times, and we're kind of holding it. I don't know if it's going to continue to hold in here into the next week. Remains to be seen. I'm going to get into the smaller time frames here shortly, but for right now, you can see the 21-day that's been providing support here a couple of times, right, along with the 200-day. So that's a positive thing for the continuation higher. You do want to see prices climb, stabilize, and continue to push, and then you want to see the 200-day moving average kind of roll back up, and then you're going to get back to trending. Right now, we're sloping higher a little bit, but we're still in this kind of nowhere land, since back in May, right? The 200-day moving average started to kind of move sideways and just stabilize. So this tells you there's not a big trending market. You do have this rally out of here, right? But it needs to have a continuation higher. 50-day moving average right now, it's about 40,400. So in case of a larger sell-off, maybe for a second wave or a B wave, that should be the place that would be, I think a pretty good support in case you're going to get some kind of a pullback in Bitcoin from after this nice impulsive move out of here. Now, I wanted to talk a little bit also about the monthly, because, by the time we're going to get and do the next video in a couple of weeks, we're already going to move on the month of September. So I know we still have a few days left in here on the, about 3 days till the 31st. But, this monthly candle looks pretty good. So we're able to, continue to kind of move sideways, maybe slightly lower, slightly higher, kind of hover around this kind of 48 to 50 level. This monthly candle will look pretty good. What I don't want to see, I don't want to see a big rejection week out of there and a return, let's say, below this level, something like that. That would start to look like, an upward rejection, and the likelihood that this move would possibly push lower and break below 30K and do something like that. Okay, so I want this monthly candle to close with conviction towards the bullish side, to give you a little bit more confirmation that the bullish trend will continue. I like the overall structure in the monthly candles. I like the fact that this bullish candle was rejected, and it didn't have a continuation lower, right? So it was just a month of sell-off followed by, a little bit of an indecision, and then we're returning to a bullish advance. So every time you get something like, you don't get a big confirmation or a big continuation from this sort of a bearish setup, tells you that there is a big stronger move coming in the opposite direction. These two candles here are kind of confirming that. And then, if we're able to close towards the highs, even with the seasonality in the month of September being bad overall, the price action tells you that there could be an explosion upwards coming and can push the prices actually, maybe even above 100,000 towards the end of the year. So I'm watching this. This is really important. I kind of keep going back to the signals. This back in here, it's something that kept us on the long side. It actually made us press the bullish side as much as we could in terms of, even leverage or getting on the spot price. But it's, the type of signals that you want to see from the market that tell you, listen, don't get bothered with the smaller time frames. Stay bullish, continue to accumulate, because this market is about to rip to the upside. When you start to have rejection candles, then you're taking the pause. And, this candle back in here kind of worried me when it happened, and I wanted to see how much continuation we will have from this one. And the fact that we kind of stalled started to regain the confidence that the bulls are really not letting the price drop below these levels, and they're starting to press the upside again. So this is encouraging. Hopefully continues here, for this bullish momentum. Let's jump over and take a look at the smaller time frames also, and you can see this is kind of the working count that I have in the pro room under this red count interpretation, where I'm looking at this as a completely structured in a wave second under this count. A little bit of an awkward, let's say, WXY you could call it, but it's I think it kind of fits overall. Usually you like to see this X wave travel much higher, where kind of wave B rests up in here. I'll show you the bearish case as well, where this is actually a 1, 2, 3, some kind of a massive fourth in here followed by a fifth, but I'll jump to it in a second. So let's stay with the bullish narrative in here. Let's say that this wave 2 kind of finished back into these levels, and now you've gotten a nice impulsive move of these lows. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I presented this 2 weeks ago, so the count really hasn't changed much since then. We've made this kind of marginal new high, right, at a smaller rate, and now we pull back in this, call it, second wave, or the beginning of a larger, correction for this, let's say, minor second wave in here. So you can see the move in here was pretty impulsive, right, at a very strong advance, higher rate of change to the upside. Then we slowed down a little bit, and now we're slowing down even more. So you can say that you have a loss of momentum, and then you go in a 1, 2, 3, 4, and a very small fifth. So it's a kind of perfect, ratio when you have such a long, let's say, first wave. When you have an extended first wave, then your wave 3 and your wave 5 will become smaller and smaller. And then you could expect that if that's correct, then maybe a second wave minor would happen in here, where this is just an initial decline. You're getting this little pullback that's actually happening right now, and then you can sell back off again. And, you can come all the way back here towards 37 and still be okay in this being, let's say a wave 1, pull back in this 2, and then kind of regain the bullish side from here. Now, it matters how this happens. If you're coming nicely and you have a nice kind of clean 3-wave correction, then, I would really buy this market back into the 37K, if I'm seeing that the pattern develops. And that's something that we're kind of watching into the pro room, as we're doing the daily videos and the daily updates, presentations, like, hey, how is the structure developing? Where are we? Is it worth it to take a long at these levels? Are we going to wait for another C-wave decline, or split the position into a few, smaller parts to kind of accumulate and build a better bullish trade? So that's something that we talk about, in the pro room every single morning to our video updates, and kind of, tell the traders how I'm thinking, what I'm watching for in the price action, and, where to kind of start to accelerate and where you kind of have to slow down a little bit if you're doing some, let's say, 2 to 3 day trades or something like that, or even if you're looking for a month to have exposure, through some, to kind of get additional income into the portfolio besides the fact that, you can stay longer term. So that's something that I'm kind of watching in here. You can see this kind of ultra bullish count. That's I'm considering this as an alternate. That's a wave 1, that's a wave 1, that's a wave 1. So 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. But it's I think it's too much of a lottery ticket. I think we should have already been breaking to the upside even before the weekend. So I think the market is kind of digesting a little bit this advance. Obviously, we're getting into a pretty heavy zone of supply right here, between 50 and 55, right? There is a bunch of resistance up into this level, so the market will stall up here. So it's not going to be I don't know if it's going to be really able to break out of here to this 1 2 1 2 1 2. So that's why, I have this as an alternate. I do like it, but I think I'm asking too much from the market, right? So I think a better kind of interpretation would be, hey, expect a little bit of a pullback here and then a continuation higher. Now, I must say I am positioned, for this because we took a long position on this pullback on the smaller time frames into the pro room as the market was coming, here into these lows. So we kind of pressed. We're about, I don't know, a couple of $1,000s in profit, or in terms of points, right? Moving up higher, we've gotten at about 46.7, and now you're at about 48.8 or something like that. So, but I moved the stops to break even already, and I'm willing to kind of let the trade go if we're starting to break. But this is just a a nice kind of way to get exposure to the upside by buying a pullback into the 618, right? Quickly moving the stops to break even, and if this works, you're going to get rewarded. If not, you have nothing to lose, right? Because you're already protected. So that's one of the ways to kind of try to generate an explosion, to the upside and kind of get ready for it, buying these kind of pullbacks into the proper fib levels. Because so far you're still in an uptrend, right? As long as you stay, let's say, above this 43,927, you're making higher highs and higher lows. So you're considering hey, what if this is one of these other things, and then you're continuing to push higher. So that's kind of the thought, a little bit on a smaller time frames to see what's going on. And now here is the case for the for the bearish setup. And I kind of have this on the back of my mind. It kind of lingers in there because this move out of here, you can argue that it's looks like a pretty clean 5-wave decline, even though you have a big mess in here. Right? So if you have a 5-wave decline from these levels, it's really hard to say that that's a finished correction all the way up to these levels, right? It's when you have an impulsive move, that's not the entire correction. It's just one leg of a correction, right? Because corrections happens in 3 waves, not in 5 waves. So if this is if it's a corrective pattern, it's just this leg out of the correction, right? Wave A. So now we're looking, if this is B, then how can this be structured? Well, there's a couple of ways. Either my count is wrong and wave 5 terminated here, and this is an A, B, C. I have a problem with this because of its structure. I think it's kind of very disproportionate. So I do prefer to kind of place a wave 5 low into these levels. And then this move out of here, it's kind of impulsive, right? I just kind of showed you a little bit earlier, that's a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that would be wave A of a 3-wave corrective pattern. It's the same story like this, like this pattern in here, except that it happens to the upside. So now you're having a wave A as an impulse, you're expecting a B wave decline and then another C wave, and that will create your B wave, corrective move. So it's a similar story, just in reverse, right? This is all it is, because markets are fractional, and they just, the Elliott wave obviously, happens both ways. So this would be wave A, this would be wave B, and then you would get a C wave decline. Now the problem with this is that by the time you're going to get a C wave advance, either this B wave has to be very sharp, so you get maybe a smaller C wave, or you're going to kind of have to climb pretty high towards 78 to 88% of this entire decline to get a properly, let's say, ratioed B wave compared with this wave A. So I got some issues with that. We'll see what happens, but you could argue that up into these levels, that's why you kind of have this indecision, because two things can happen, right? Either you're going to get a second wave pullback in here, right, and then a return much higher. Either you're going to get a B wave and a C, right? So you kind of putting the odds in your favor that maybe a pullback is coming either on a second or a B, and that's kind of the waves start to kind of overlap and align and give you a trading opportunity, right? Now, I don't really like to trade them from the short side. I'm not big into that, and I'm kind of trying to stay away, because you always kind of have more edge towards the bullish side, since you're going with more of the larger momentum of this kind of network continuing to grow. But maybe I'm willing to trade a C wave in here because it's towards the bullish side, rather than trade a sell-off here in B. So we'll see what happens. If I'm going to get a decline here, and if it's in 3 waves, right, then I'm going to get excited and say, listen, I think it's time for us to get long, and we're going to pound the long side one more time. So that's kind of the idea behind this this bearish outlook. Now, if this whole thing gets a B wave, then you would get an impulsive move down, right? And that's kind of what I'm watching for. If you're going to get a nice 5-wave decline out of these levels, and you're going to get then a 3-wave setback, then you're going to get a 3, a 4, and a 5, and you're going to come, sorry for the mess in here, but 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and that would complete wave C. Then you would have, this move would be an A, up in B, and then down in C, and then you're going to push back up high. So we'll continue to watch this, guys, and I am a little bit, slightly worried about this count, and the moment this kind of worry will start to dissipate, it will be when I'm going to see this market kind of pound above the 78.6 and start to kind of push a little bit higher in here. Then I'm going to start to get more confident that we're about to resume and we're about to explode higher. So I want to see what happens in the month of September. How much of a reaction we're going to get, how much of a sell-off, if any, and then that will kind of give me the further clues if we should really start to accumulate more, pound more, increase our trades, and then continue to push higher. Now let me show you a little bit of and this really hasn't changed much since a couple of weeks ago, but I do want to reiterate this point of a very strong kind of connection in risk, right, between the rest of the assets and Bitcoin. And you can see how the S&P 500 continues to make higher highs and higher lows, and pretty much every sell-off continues to get bought, right? That's an indicative of a pretty bullish market. Now there is not a lot of momentum, right? There's not a lot of volatility into the market where you're really ripping to the upside, 2% a day, maybe 1%, whatever. The moves are kind of small in here, so I don't know exactly what's going on. Maybe it's just because it's summer. We've gotten, a green light from the Federal Reserve here yesterday when, they completely said that they're not looking to taper. They're, watching the inflation. I don't want to get into this whole, debate and details about this, but pretty much the, Fed Powell was pretty dovish overall, and, so I'm standing ready to support. He didn't say the stock market actually, but I think that's what he meant. So we're going to continue to look higher in the stocks, right? So since that's, pretty high correlation here with the S&P 500 and risk overall, Bitcoin should continue to benefit. So that's why I'm not necessarily seeing, a big bearish move into the cryptos unless something else happens also into the risk assets. And you can, see that if S&P 500 starts to kind of aggressively sell lower, then, you can say that, Bitcoin and the rest of the crypto field will start to kind of sell out. But something has to trigger that, either something from the Federal Reserve or it's an outside event. Again, something from the regulatory side on Bitcoin and cryptos. And for right now, those continue to stay flat, if not bullish, with so much, ETF applications and, with regulators kind of looking at this thing to try to kind of incorporate it into their into the new laws coming out, which I think are going to be positive towards the crypto field. So I continue to watch this correlation. I think it's important, and it kind of gives me something to fall back on in terms of analyzing risk overall. Now, here is another interesting thing here. I want to show you Bitcoin relative to Coinbase, and I don't know what's going on here, but I think there could be an opportunity here because Coin is definitely, it's been following the price of Bitcoin, pretty well ever since it kind of, came with the IPO, which was actually the top in Bitcoin, and we have a little bit of a disconnect here, and I'm not sure what's going on, but Coin is only at about 259, and Bitcoin it's been rallying in here, and I'm having a little bit of a divergence. So I don't know, either Bitcoin is selling off in here or Coin has to kind of catch up. So I'm probably going to go with the latter version, and this could mean that maybe coming Monday or Tuesday I would probably pound in buying some Coin in here, because I think we're having a little bit of a disconnect in here, and this tells me that the price should rally in Coin. So just kind of something I want to draw your attention to. I'm kind of watching this. You've had similar kind of divergences right when it kind of started, but overall it's kind of following the same trend. So keep an eye on Coin and see kind of what's that going to do kind of coming next week, and why it's not actually pushing higher. The earnings were pretty good, so just something I kind of wanted to show. show you. Now, let me just, before we have a quick pause in here, I want to show you a little bit the seasonality. And this is the month of September. And this is a little bit of a different chart that I presented a couple of weeks ago. But it takes a look at, you know, how is kind of Bitcoin performing on a monthly basis here, looking back. This is going back to 2014. Here on stock charts, I don't have more data out of here. So it's about 8 years. You know, 7 years, and you can see that this is the percentage of months that Bitcoin actually, you know, closed higher than it opened from 2014 to 2021. So you can say that, you know, this is about 30%, right? So, you know, if you take, let's say, you know, 9 years, right? Only 3 of those years, right? Bitcoin actually closed higher than it opened. The rest of them, you know, the other 6, it actually closed lower than it opened. So that's a pretty, you know, strong indication that obviously the month of September, it's a pretty negative month for Bitcoin. And it's kind of one of the weakest. The other one I think here is March, but I would have to take a look at the other because it's got a little bit more data. If March could be a little bit better than September overall. And in average, you know, the gains over the month of September over this past 7-8 years were only about minus 7.7%. So you can see, you know, what I mean when I say seasonally that the month of September is pretty notorious for Bitcoin overall. So maybe this month will be something that will work towards it, and you know, going back and then, you know, maybe next year. I mean, when you're going to look at this chart, let's say, you know, let's say 5-6 years from now, this month of September will be, you know, maybe higher a little bit, or who knows. But for right now, this is kind of data that we're having so far. So just about a third of those months, it's been a good month. The rest of them were pretty bad. So, but going into October and November and even December, you know, you're actually looking the other way, right? In about 70%. So, you know, 3/4 of the time, Bitcoin actually closed higher than it opened. So these are pretty bullish months coming up into October, November. You know, even December in here slightly lower, but still in terms of seasonality, it looks pretty good. And then with kind of monthly terms of about 18%, 11%, and about 15% here in December. So let's continue to push here. But before we do, guys, take a quick little break. I'm not going to spend a lot of time. Subscribe and like, you know the deal, blah, 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 blah. You can kind of see what we do on Elliott Cafe Pro Room every single day, you know. So here is the charts, and I mean, sorry, the presentation and kind of what we're doing up there. So, all right, forget about this. Let's go over and take a look at Ethereum. And Ethereum, I really haven't, you know, changed the charts here. It's basically, you know, this is August 14, and Ethereum has been going nowhere for the past couple of weeks. So there was no point for me to really update it. It's probably just another little blip back in here, kind of moving sideways. Overall, the charts remain the same. Looking at this as a cycle, 1, 2, just like in Bitcoin, then a 1, 2, 3, 4, and possibly 5. Or this wave 1 is complete, just like Bitcoin is, and you're having a wave 2 finished back into these levels instead of a 4. So not really much to talk about. In Ethereum, I think the longer trend remains higher, as you can see in here. We're probably going to push towards 6,000, 10,000. You know, as this network continues to develop and grow and people build on it. I know it's got a lot of competitors, right? I mean, Solana is there, you have Cardano, you have, you know, a bunch of other ones that are pretty good at what they do. This is the most used one so far, and it's the one that's growing at the highest rate. So, you know, I don't have a lot of knowledge into that field fundamentally, so I'm not gonna get into it. But in terms of the chart structure, pattern structure continues to look pretty bullish, pending maybe, you know, a little bit of a corrective move in here, let's say for the next couple of months or so, if it's moving into, let's say, more of a triangle structure. Before I jump to that, I want to show you this on the candlestick chart and on the monthly. To me, this looks pretty darn bullish because you've had a pretty large correction in here for a couple of years. You broke above it to new all-time highs. You kind of came and retested this. I could really consider this a second wave, although, you know, fairly small, right? So if you look at, you know, some of the kind of previous corrections in here, they took a little bit longer to unfold. So maybe that's what's going to happen in here as well. And then you're going to kind of continue to push higher. And that's, I mean, what is that? That's 20,000. So, you know, it's, this 2 rejection candles here continue to look pretty good. If this monthly candle closes towards the high, just like in Bitcoin, that's an encouraging sign for Ethereum moving forward. Here is the other count where it looks just like in Bitcoin. That's a 1, 2, 3, and then we're sideways in 4, and we are, somewhere in some kind of a complex B wave in here. You've had your A wave, you're doing your B, C, D, and E, and then you're going to break to the upside. So again, just a kind of a sideways drag-on move towards the rest of the year before we embark into the next move higher towards $84,000 to $10,000, maybe even higher. So that's kind of what I'm seeing in Ethereum overall. So not a whole lot to really discuss, not even on the smaller time frames. It's pretty pretty sideways in here. I am going to show you actually a small time frame, and then I'm going to revisit the rotations. So here it is. And I kind of wanted to put this into the context of relative strength compared with Bitcoin. So you can see kind of what happens in here. This is kind of the last time we talked. We're just kind of going nowhere in here, right? So it's just a sideways move. It could be that that's a 1, that's a 2, that's a 3, and then you're doing maybe, since this was such a directional move in a second wave, this could be a fourth wave, right? So that's your wave 1, that's your wave 2, wave 3, and now you're doing a complex move in here in this fourth wave, and then you're going to push back up higher here in this wave. Now, if this happens and you're starting to get towards 3,700 in Ethereum, that's a pretty good indication, guys, that after some kind of a short setback in 3 waves, that you're going to continue to push higher. Right? So I'm watching this like a hawk because I'm really curious to see what happens in Ethereum. And here is a chart from a couple of weeks ago when I was looking at this rotation, and here is the one from right now. So back then we were looking at Ethereum, and I said, listen, I think it's losing momentum in here, and Bitcoin is actually having a little bit more, more alpha, more bullish, and it actually made a new high into that kind of fifth wave while Ethereum stalled, and you can see that into the chart here as well. So we were looking at the loss of momentum, right? The relative strength was continued to stay fine because we're on the right side of the quadrant in here, right? And as long as we stay to the right of these of the squares in here, Ethereum kind of outperforms Bitcoin. Similar story on the weekly charts as well. But when you're starting to drop, that means that Bitcoin starts to outperform and Ethereum is losing momentum in here. And this is on the kind of on the weekly charts, and that's on the dailies. So this is where we were a couple of weeks ago, and you can see how that actually happened, right? We were back in here, but what happened was Bitcoin pushed higher towards 50K, 50,500, while Ethereum moved sideways. And the rotation graphs actually shows you that. The arrow was pointing lower, right? And it told you, in advance that the chances of Ethereum rallying and outperforming Bitcoin are kind of small if you're looking at both the weekly charts, which are weakening, and the daily charts, which were weakening. So for the past couple of weeks, what happened in Ethereum? It lost even more momentum relative to Bitcoin because we pushed lower. So this is the weakening quadrant. Right now we're getting into the lagging quadrant. So if you're comparing performance, let's say over the past couple of weeks in here, right now Bitcoin, it's outperforming Ethereum at the moment. We're just kind of slightly getting into this lagging, but the good thing is that you're noticing that Ethereum is starting to turn higher. So I'm curious to see what's going to happen over the next few days, and if Ethereum is going to start to roll up here, or if it's going to start to kind of go sideways or even this way, right? That means that Bitcoin will continue to outperform, and you want to be involved in Bitcoin, not in Ethereum necessarily, if you're switching between them in terms of the relative strength. Now, in terms of the weekly performance, Ethereum is starting to pick up a little bit in here over the past couple of weeks, right? Just kind of just starting. This is kind of where we were when we looked at it, right? Now this take much longer time to form, right? Because it's on and actually this hasn't been updated yet, so I might be wrong. This could kind of be sideways like that. So this is August 23rd. I'm gonna have to revisit this on Monday and see kind of where this is at. But so I'm gonna kind of retrace my words here. But it's still kind of on the weekly basis, it's still kind of weak. So what I do want to see, I want to see a move kind of higher like that, and a push back here into the leading quadrant for Ethereum to start to push higher against Bitcoin, right? And this, it's not going to happen overnight. So this cycle will take maybe 2 to 4 weeks to form, and that's why I think this month of September is very important. And we'll see what happens on the daily chart and on the daily time frames here, how it push. But I would definitely keep an eye on this over the next 2 weeks. And so that's kind of what I'm seeing in Ethereum. And this is kind of confirmed by the price action moving sideways. Guys, we're towards the end. There you go. I mean, it's a long video. Jesus, 35 minutes. But go ahead and visit us onto the Elliott Wave room, open 24/7, night, day. Updates and videos and talks and trades, and you can see everything I do. I post in there regarding stocks and bullish trades with stops, with explanations and all that stuff. This is what we do. This is the course that comes associated with the 1-month subscription. And I'm not going to bore you with all this stuff, guys. I love you all. Thank you for subscribing. Please continue to watch this video. Share them around. Give us a like. It's important we continue to grow. I love you all, and I'll see you in a couple of weeks. Bye-bye.